The title of this morning's sermon, Opening the Treasure Chest. Opening the treasure chest. This morning we're going to be focusing in on the theme of worship. What is worship? And this question is of crucial importance because you might have noticed you are in a worship service. And not only that, but this particular worship service is all shaped that you might worship not just for an hour on a Sunday, but for the other 167 hours of the week, worship in the whole of life. Where will you be this time tomorrow? Will you be shopping for your turkey? Or will you be in a cafe? Or will you be on social media? Or will you be at work? Or will you be at home? Will you be with friends? That will be where Worthing Baptist Church will be worshipping this time tomorrow, wherever you are. And I believe that if we give a bit of time to reflect on worship right now, that actually it will have a direct impact on what goes on this time tomorrow when we will be worshipping in the whole of life. Before we dive into that, just a quick recap. Following a Star, this is our series, our Advent series, so if you weren't here, I'll just quickly get you up to speed. So our series began with the sermon, Where and How Shall We Begin? And we looked at the way God meets us where we're at, with a grace that invites us on a journey. And for the Magi, it was a star. That was the grace of God for them. A star that compelled them to leave the coziness of home and go on a journey into the unknown. It was all by faith, a journey towards Jesus Christ. And then over the last couple of weeks, Mike has been preaching on the inner journey and the need to keep going and growing, and how going deeper with God and being transformed into his likeness mirrors in some way that journey the Magi took as they walked by faith towards Bethlehem. And throughout these sermons, I think it's fair to say that the worship, the theme of worship, has been there. It's kind of been in the background, but it's very much been there. But today, it's going to come to the forefront. It's a theme that's been steadily building. We might think back, and we've read it this morning, when the Magi arrived at Jerusalem, they asked, where is the one who has been born, the King of the Jews? We saw his star when it rose and have come to worship him. And then when Herod heard about all of this, he sends the Magi on to Bethlehem, saying, go and search carefully for the child. As soon as you find him, report to me, so that I may go and worship him. And so we have this kind of sincere intention of the Magi, not so sincere intention of Herod, who sees Jesus as a threat to his political power. And what we find today in this morning's reading is the way that the Magi's worship becomes a reality, while Herod's worship is frustrated when the Magi go back another route. So we kind of have this duality, kind of sincere, insincere, fulfillment, frustration. That's just how it plays out in the story. More of that a bit later. But the key thing for us right now is that worship is central to this story. The whole of this story, worship is central. So in this morning's sermon, Opening the Treasure Chest, we're going to be focusing in, with the help of the Magi, on what worship is. On what worship is. Does that sound okay? I first started thinking deeply about what worship is when I first started leading the worship music at my previous church. And I remember people encouraging me, saying things like, the worship was great this morning, well done. Or they'd say things like, God really showed up when you led worship this evening. Or they'd say, the worship really flowed this morning. And by that they always meant the sung worship. And all those people loved God and were very encouraging towards me. But I realised that they were saying that the worship was the music. Almost worship was confined to music in some way. But not only that, the worship was something we could evaluate. Worship was something we could evaluate. Good, not good. Flowed, didn't flow. God showed up, God didn't show up. Worship was something we could enjoy or not enjoy. Some people also said things like, oh, I don't like it when Peter chooses chooses the songs. I don't like it when Peter leads the music because then he chooses the songs, and he chooses a song from every decade, from the 60s through to today. And there were those people as well. People didn't say all positive things. Something that we can evaluate, worship being something that we can evaluate. Now, this idea of worship and music being together, this wasn't the formal teaching of the church, but it was kind of like theology on the ground. It was what people had absorbed, and that's what I absorbed, and it wasn't all bad, because people came on a Sunday with this kind of expectancy and excitement about the musical worship, about sung worship. People expected to encounter God in it, and that was amazing. And it was experiential. People weren't just kind of standing up, sitting down, singing out of a duty, but out of a love for God and this kind of desire for God to give them something, God to do something. They wanted to receive from God, and I think there was a lot of good in that. But I have to say that this idea that worship is kind of confined to the music on Sunday, half an hour of music or whatever, this is too small. It seems too small of an idea about worship. What is worship? And this idea that worship can be evaluated based on our experience or our enjoyment of it, that seems too small too. Isn't worship more than just our music? Shouldn't God be the one who evaluates it? Who's it all for? For Him? Is it not for His enjoyment? I recognise that we all come from different backgrounds here, so church backgrounds, non-church backgrounds. You might have gone to church the Sunday after you were born, or until you came here, your only experience of church might have been songs of praise on the TV that you occasionally saw. Or you might have come from a Baptist background like this, or you might have come from an Anglican background, or Methodist, or Catholic, or FIEC, or Pentecostal. You might have come from more of a charismatic tradition, or you might have come from a more contemplative tradition. My hunch is that they're not all that dissimilar. Do we lift our hands, or do we not? Do we dance, or do we not? How does our culture shape our worship and our understanding of worship? How does our culture shape all of that? Some members of Worthing Baptist Church, past and present, grew up Muslim, or Taoist, or atheist. How does all of that shape how they perceive worship? Interesting questions. All of that history, all our culture, all our experience, it will shape in some way how we see worship. Some of us would like the Lord's Prayer and the Creed every week. Others of us would like to sing the same chorus 7 times and then just wait on God. Some of us would like both. Some of us see worship as an event. Some of us see worship as a lifestyle. Some of us just want to sing Great Is Thy Faithfulness in a cold stone church. Others of us want to get out of the church and want to paint and prophesy and make pottery all to the glory of God. That's a different kind of worship. That's another kind of style of worship. But what about God? What pleases God? What pleases God? Throughout Advent on Monday mornings, a number of us have been meeting here for centering prayer, which is a kind of silent form of prayer. We don't voice our requests to God, we just be with God. And I found it a really wonderful time, really special prayer time. And if I'm honest, I know I need it as well, because I need this kind of noise detox. I need time to be silent. I need all of that. And God knows that I need all of that. But I've also needed to remind myself as well that it's not all about me and what I need, although God knows what I need and loves to give good gifts to His children. But actually, how I perceive that prayer and its impact on me, whether I see results of it or not, I'm not sure how important that is, because the whole point of prayer is not for results to come out of it for me, but to simply just be with God, to say yes to God, to offer myself to God. And actually, it's mysterious. And actually, I don't know what impact it has on me. I don't know what results worship will bring to my life. I don't know how spending time in prayer or worship will transform me, but actually I can let that go, because isn't it more than just my perception of it? And sometimes I think we get so used to our way of seeing worship, our experience of it, our enjoyment or lack of enjoyment of it, that we lose sight of who it's all for. With that in mind, let's dive into this final part of our story and see how the Magi worship the wise men. So the Magi's legs are aching, and their biceps strained and stretched from carrying the treasure chest all the way. Leaving home to follow the star seemed like a good idea at the beginning, but the journey had been tougher than they had expected. They'd had a little bit of rest in Jerusalem. They met Herod. Seemed like a pretty nice guy, very welcoming, hospitable. He was interested in what they were up to. He wanted to worship the King of the Jews too. It's interesting because when they left, there was this kind of feeling of dread as they set out for Bethlehem. Something about that Herod didn't seem quite right. They had this kind of sense of foreboding in the pit of their stomachs, a feeling of dread, alarm bells about his intentions. And so they go on carrying the treasure chest with all of these things going round in their heads. But then their dread mingled with exhaustion had just dissolved when they saw that star over a certain place in Bethlehem, and they rejoiced exceedingly. They entered into the house. They saw the child and his mother Mary. They fell down with faces to the ground and worshipped him. These Magi, these wise men, wise, learned, worthy of honour in their homeland, worshipping this small, weak, poor child. Their elation was like that of athletes who cross the finish line and just fall to their knees. But rather than gold medals being hung around their necks, instead they compose themselves, reach for their treasure chest, open it up, and give gold to the child, and frankincense and myrrh, the most luxurious gifts of their homeland. They bask in the presence of the infant. They don't leave too quickly, they're not too hasty. In fact, they probably stayed the night because they were warned in a dream not to go back the way they came, but to go back by an alternative route. Their intention to worship was fulfilled, while Herod's intention to worship was frustrated. So what is worship? What is worship? Now, I can't give you kind of an exhaustive, I can't give you a theology of worship. I think we can look at this particular story and draw some insights from this, because God loves to speak to us through particular stories, particular people, particular times, and somehow He breathes into it and inspires it by His Holy Spirit. And so let's just concentrate on this story for now. What is worship? Some insights, just 4 insights. Hold on. Okay, worship is openness. Worship is openness. I find that image of the Magi opening their treasures very, very striking. If you don't hear anything else from this sermon, please take away that image of the treasure chest opening. And I imagine this big wooden treasure chest with squeaky hinges and a big old lock on it. And I imagine them cranking it open, reverently opening it and bringing out of it their richest gift for the baby Jesus. And isn't that what worship is all about? Acknowledging that Jesus is worthy of all our treasure, all the treasure we have, all our time, our talents, our money, our effort, our history, our breath, the whole lot of it. He can have it all. We open the chest as far as the hinges will allow and offer it all to Him. Imagine that your life is a large house with many, many rooms, bedrooms, kitchen, lounge, basement, loft, dining room, Are there any of those rooms off limits to God? Or is it all open for him to dwell in? Are you open to him? Are you open to him? Are you open to his continual leading as well? Like the Magi who were warned in a dream to return by another route. And we all have hopes for the future. But do you offer those to God? Offer them to God, asking him to redirect them if need be. Worship is openness. Isn't that what we do on a Sunday? Isn't this what all of this is about? Worship is openness. We're opening our mouths to sing and to pray. Opening our minds and our hearts and our ears to God. Opening our Bibles. Opening our purses and our wallets. Opening ourselves to people who are very unlike us. Opening ourselves to be moved. Opening our eyes and letting the tears fall. Opening our hands to receive. Opening our hands to give. Isn't it all about openness? Isn't all of this about openness? Worship is opening that treasure chest. Are you open to God this morning? Whoever you are you open to God this morning? I could talk more about that, but worship is also contextual. Worship is contextual. The Magi brought the most expensive and luxurious gifts from their homeland, and that was appropriate worship for them. If they had been local shepherds from round the corner, they wouldn't have brought these kinds of gifts. They'd have brought something else. Traditionally, we think of the shepherds bringing a lamb, but who knows? The important thing is that the Magi brought something of great worth to them. It was the best they had. What do you have? What do you have? What do you have? Do you ever compare what you offer to someone else? Because I do. I also know how dangerous it is as well when we compare what we have to offer God with someone else. When you get home, open up the Bible, read Genesis 4, Cain and Abel, that's where it all went wrong for them. Envy at another's offering. I won't go into that now, but offer the best that you can offer. Offer the best that you can offer. Don't offer the least you can offer. Don't offer what you can't offer. Offer the best that you can offer. Because worship is contextual. Worship is contextual. Your worship needs to be you worshipping God in a way that is integrated with who you are. Sadly, in the past, Westerners have gone and built Western-style churches in the countries that they have evangelized, encouraged Western-style clothing, and encouraged Western-style hymns. What a shame, because worship is contextual. It's going to look different depending on who we are. Please don't compare your worship to others. Your worship must come from your unique treasure chest. Bring him whatever you have. All the good. All the not so good. Let him refine it, but offer all of that you are. In the words of Oscar Wilde, be yourself, everyone else is taken. Whether you're male or female, reserved or expressive, able-bodied or disabled, straight-laced or non-conforming, gay or straight or bi, black or white or Asian, worship him with what is in your treasure chest. Worship is contextual. It's going to look different for you than it looks for me. Worship is also everywhere. Worship doesn't just happen in our church. Worship doesn't just happen in the Nativity stable. And I know this is not a new idea for you because in this church we've been talking about whole life discipleship, whole life mission, how it's not just about that 1 hour on a Sunday, but 167 other hours in the whole of the week. Our home groups are called whole life groups because we believe that our faith has to have an impact on the whole of life and that God meets us where we're at in the whole of life. Worship doesn't just happen where we expect Jesus to be. The Magi came from their homes to see Jesus. They went back to their homes afterwards. They were worshipping throughout. It was all by faith. To get there, it was by faith. To get back by another route, it was by faith. All of that was worship. Worship doesn't just take place inside the four walls. Worship doesn't take place everywhere and anywhere. In the Gospels, people encountered and bowed down before Jesus in all sorts of places. On the road, in homes, at parties. You can worship him wherever you go. The question is, will you ask God? Will you ask the Holy Spirit, the Spirit of Jesus, what are you up to where I am this time tomorrow? Will you ask God, what kind of redemptive things is he doing in your school, your workplace, in your home, in your sports club, in this world? How can I join you, Holy Spirit, in what you're doing? How can I worship you in the whole of life? How can I join in? And worship is mysterious. Worship is mysterious. Full-grown men of noble reputation worshipping a baby in a foreign land. That doesn't make sense. There's a whole lot of mystery here. They don't know for sure that they're doing the right thing. Their following of the star and their consulting of the tradition and the scriptures in Jerusalem points them in the right direction. But the rest is by faith. Entering into the mystery. Many people today would prefer to fully understand things before they put their faith in Jesus Christ. Many people today would prefer to have got everything sewn up before they worship. But the Magi model another way. Their way is faith seeking understanding, in the words of Anselm. Faith seeking understanding. You don't have to have everything sorted and sewn up to begin worshipping Jesus Christ. In fact, you can begin worshipping him at any time, and actually that leads to the understanding. Worship is entering into mystery. It really is mystery. Entering into paradox. Two things that come together that don't make sense. Worshipping a newborn who is also the eternal God. This is crazy. And yet it's paradox, and yet when we enter into it, we can find a deeper, richer kind of understanding emerges from that. We don't have to have everything sorted, sewn up, understood. We don't have to have everything lined up with our intellect before we worship. Try worshipping first. Try that faith-seeking understanding. As I come to close, just want to get back to that striking image of the treasure chest. Worthing Baptist Church, we are like a treasure chest. We're like a treasure chest. And God sees it all. He sees the gold, he sees the silver, he sees the precious jewels of every colour when he looks at us. And he sees all the rough edges too. He knows all about it. And he's working on them, and he's sifting, and he's refining us. He will complete that good work he's begun in us. We're like a treasure chest. Will you open? Will you be part of that opening of the treasure chest? Will you be part of that holding nothing back? Will you open yourself to God? And when we do, we recognise that actually he opened himself to us first. He opened his treasure chest and presented all the riches and the love of the Father, Son and Holy Spirit. He came in vulnerable, fragile human flesh, vulnerable to sickness, vulnerable to heartache, vulnerable to death at our hands, all because this God would prefer to be God with us rather than God without us. Is this the kind of God that could win your openness? Is this the kind of God that you could trust? One that holds nothing back, but gives himself for the love and redemption of the world. I can't speak for you, but this is the kind of God that makes me want to open the treasure chest. This is the kind of God that makes me want to worship. Amen.